This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to the Tapped In Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Bud. I'm here with Mikey. Goatee Mikey, Vacation Mikey, on the road.
Mode Mikey, yeah, on the road.
And then we've got a new guest, guestest with the mostest, Hunter from North Dakota. How are you, my man?
I'm doing great. It's been a beautiful week. Finally starting to sell some beer. It was a cold June until this week.
What is a cold June in North Dakota, in Bismarck and Dickinson, North Dakota?
It's mid 50s to mid 60s.
That is cold.
Which is brutal. This time last year to start June, it was like between 90 and 100. So it's and it could be that any year.
So no global
50s,
warming.
you could get 100.
No global warming exists this spring or late spring, early summer in Dickinson and Bismarck this year.
No, not up here. Except they do it now that it's getting hot though. Looks like there's gonna be some pretty gnarly storms the next couple of days. So we'll see. It's always an adventure in the summertime up here, to say the least.
No, I know your crew was still out, even in that cold weather, wearing flip-flops and shorts, selling beer.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So for the Tapped In crew, this is Hunter Jerome with Jerome Distributing. Hunter, I wanted to have you introduce yourself first and kind of tell us a little bit about Jerome Distributing, about the market, yourself, how you came in the business, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be considered successor manager at Jerome Distributing. Grew up in and alongside the business, fifth generation of Jeromes in the beer industry. I guess you could say third generation here in Jerome Distributing in its transition, as we've been blessed to have the chance to kind of split and grow, avoid some family conflict over the time. We operate in Southwest North Dakota, cover about a quarter of the state. Yeah, I've been back full time for just going on 5 years. After going to college and doing some work prior to moving back, and it's been great. It's definitely an adventure every day in an industry that I think we all know is oddly unique and highly competitive, which some days I find odd and how competitive it is, but it's like you're in the trenches every day. I mean, just talking with my own guys makes me laugh, talking with suppliers, and I think even more so just trying to figure out where in the world is the next generation going in regards to drinking beer, drinking beverage alcohol, drinking whatever.
For sure. Now, when you came back, how long have you been back now?
5 years.
5 years total. Okay. 5 years total. I love it. And then what did you start doing when you were back?
I started on the truck hauling beer.
A helper, or do you have a CDL? I can't remember.
No,
now.
I have a CDL. I got my CDL when I was 19, I think. I tried to challenge my dad to get it at the same time that I did, but that didn't go very well. Actually, my little brother, who is 19 and is working on getting his CDL, challenged my dad to the same thing. And I said, yeah, good luck. I tried that 10 years ago. It's not going to happen. So he got a pretty good kick out of that. But I do. So I started, quasi as a helper, but I'd done some work over in the market over here, even though I grew up in our Western market. And it's just a blast. I mean, maybe obviously a difficult part of the last 5 years was COVID, but COVID is what forced me into the office with some technology updates, and then just slowly got me involved more in the administrative and in managing operations of our business, which is great, is a lot of fun, but still just love to be on the front line on beer, which I think I have the great grace to be able to do next week and the busiest week, so we can get our guys off, at noon on the 4th to enjoy time with your family.
Nice. So you're going to get on the truck and drive next week?
Oh, yeah.
Look at you. You and Mike are both have your CDLs. You can get on the truck and drive. Bill and I will hang out and cook for everybody.
Might be. We need that too.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So what about the portfolio? Tell people a little bit about the brands you work with. I know Molson Coors. What else is on the docket as far as Supplier?
Molson Coors, Mike's, Mark Anthony, Boston Beer, Heineken, Diageo Beer Company, some smaller local craft. Red Bull, we do have a fair amount of portfolio. Red Bull, Liquid Death, Arizona Teas, Sparkling Ice in part of our territory, KDP in part of our territory, Pabst, I guess that's a big one that we missed. Set up here in particular, Grain Belts. It's a great Midwest beer.
Yes. Yes.
Up around these parts.
A ton of shells and a ton of grain belt for you guys.
Yeah, which is fun because our family started in the beer industry with Grain Belt, before Prohibition, and then after they got in with Anheuser-Busch, and since then, that part of the family, different business, sells Anheuser-Busch and maybe the opposite of what we do, but they don't sell Grain Belt anymore. So there's some good heritage I have hanging outside my office. Great grandpa's old wool Grain Belt vest. So that one's always fun to get out in the market and see what it's doing.
That's awesome. I had some Northeast when I was with you. Love that beer. One of my favorites for sure.
It's a good one.
So we came together, Hunter, and this was, a project that you had been working on for a while. But what we wanted to kind of talk with you today is kind of some key stuff around, VXP and your jumping off point, some of the stuff we worked through with leadership compensation, rep compensation. So where I want to kind of get started today is learn a little bit about what your jumping off point was with VXP around bringing just that theory and that thinking into the organization at Jerome.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that intrigued me is we always talked internally about, how do we drive on gross profit? How do we motivate our guys on gross profit? But we never had the data. I just internally work as hard. I always got the direction from my dad. Well, we got to make sure the guys are selling our most profitable packages. I'm like, well, how do they know that? Well, you got to tell them. Well, how do you tell them when you have 12 to 1,500 SKUs in a year that you touch? You have good points. So that was probably the starting off point. I think the second piece was really not having all the clarity around how our guys are compensated when it comes to, say, the commission side of things. And so I'm just in my time being on the truck, being on sales routes, and just getting to know our crew. They love what they do here. They love working for us, but they're like, well, I don't understand this. And that was kind of a friction point. So I think after it's at least cleared some of that up for most of my reps. There's still some that are still working through to fully understand it and grasp it, but in a really good spot now.
Awesome. And when for the crew, for the listeners, you were a revenue-based commission model box-wise, right?
Just actually on gross dollars.
Just gross revenue.
It wasn't based on boxes. And so yeah, so it was there and they knew that, but they didn't necessarily know, okay, that's great, but how do I make more? Yeah. Just confusing for some of them.
They understood the value of, each box is a proxy to profitability, but there's some more nuance behind the iron curtain of profitability than just revenue side. When you started to think through, we did some conversations with Phil, your dad, and yourself around making this move. Did you guys have any big fears around opening up Pandora's box around profitability, or letting the team inside the tent understand that data point more?
I know he had some fear on opening up the box for them to see what we're making per package and whatnot. I think my fear was not so much on that, and I was always thinking, well, if we want them to sell that which makes the house the most money and give them a share in that, the only way to do that is to give them that information, and that's going to be all the more motivated for them and for us, when it comes to pricing and even looking at new products and whatnot. I think my fear came in when it came to having to have the conversations with the team of what is this going to look like on your compensation. The rollout timing with the disruption in the beer industry was unique. Was some of the guys seeing, when you're based strictly on gross sales, what that did, and to be able to now moderate that and at least set it up for longevity for our business too, to make sure that we can manage our commissions but also take care of our crew. So I think that was probably my fear, but from the numbers piece, I know that was definitely Bill's fear. But I think it's only a benefit for our guys to have a better understanding of that to take care of everyone.
Yeah, learning, knowledge is power. Was that there's that joke, ours pizza, pizza is knowledge, pizza is money, or something like that. There's this whole thing she goes through, but it all starts with knowledge is power. And, knowledge is power. And that's what's really important about, the making the changes that you did is you saw a really elegant way to, provide more knowledge and generate more power for the team. When you empower the team better, we get different results. So the next piece I want to talk about was, leadership compensation. So you have, 2 locations. You've got a general, what I would call a general sales manager, and then 2 kind of, what would you call area sales managers, territory managers?
You could call them. I mean, we just call them sales managers, but in essence, they are, more area or territory managers working out of each location.
Yeah. The general sales manager kind of leads the sales operation at the top, and then 2 direct people that report to them that are really experts in each location.
Yeah.
That crew had a dynamic where there wasn't a lot of variable compensation for that crew. And one of the things that like you and I spent a lot of time talking about through implementation was how do we get that crew aligned and invested with what the frontline sales team are going to be, and also some skin and opportunity in the game related to the changes that you want to make too, is that they are in fact salespeople too, maybe not frontline or have as much impact on the day-to-day behavior as what the frontline does, but they have leadership capabilities and kind of moving the needle globally across the board. So talk the group through, or tell me more about like what you were thinking through that and deciding around how to approach that as well, because this was a big part of the project that we took on together.
Yeah, no, this was a big part, and basically for management and sales to clear up some of those compensation. And so when we talked about leadership, we're like, okay, I had some of the guys that were like, I see what this is going to do for the guys, but ultimately, like, do I get a cut of that pie too? Because I'm going to help driving it. I had some that, were a little more timid, and I'm like, I don't really have much at risk. I don't really want to put much at risk. And so, we got the chance to talk through all of it and share, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're all in on setting these goals. And so obviously I'm going to be there overall to moderate it. So that way you guys aren't, setting such low goals that you guys are just taking home the bank. But at the same time, to set reasonable goals that we want to drive the business and motivates all of us. And so in that, I mean, there's some challenges, there's some nuance to that conversation. But in the end, so far, I mean, it's been really good. I haven't really gotten too much pushback now that we're rolling with our leadership crew. Of this is great to get the chance to see, and it's been really fun too, because we also looped our operational guys into it to get them to ask the questions and slowly, very slowly, turn the thinking of all of our crew from top down and inside out of, okay, what is, to talk more around profitability than just say volume or execution or, what are we paying for this or that? Like, yes, we're worried about the expense side too. Maybe worried isn't the right word, but aware of what we're spending, right? But at the same time, okay, we can only spend on the expense side because we know we're driving sales to make the business profitable, and then we'll manage that, side by side. So that's just a little bit to the leadership piece, but it was, it was a unique road to drive down, to say the least.
I think that's great. And remind me, we added some money to the pot for the leadership team, and we pulled some money out of their base to kind of add value in total. So we did a mix of both, right?
Yeah, and it was a mix, and my leadership team was not, they didn't all have the same comp structure. And so we clean, I mean, now they have pretty much the same comp structure with a portion that's, their base, and a portion that's in VXP that we harvested or split a little bit. And so that makes it a lot easier too.
Yeah. We did that same thing with you, Mikey. And I think this is a good point, kind of add some color around, because what I did to you, and we share some more numbers around this, like I took $5,000 off your base.
Yeah.
And added $5,000 to the pot, but then took it from your base and added it into VXP for a $10,000 total for your total comp. And that, I'll kick it off. That kind of fucking pissed you off, didn't it?
Yeah, it did irritate me a little bit, just for the simple fact of I had already been there for almost 20 years. And during that time, I had, I was our operations manager. First, I was in the warehouse, and I was our operations manager. Then I came over to sales management. So I had never really had any dollars at risk. Everything was always in a base, always in salary. So yeah, at first I'm like, hey man, I earned this money. This is my base. Why are you taking it away and making me earn it again? So yeah, Bud and I had a couple conversations around that. And then it wasn't, you fast forward 5-6 months later.
You were very kind to call it a conversation. It was a notification.
Yeah, good. That's a good way to put it. But then if you fast forward, I remember then our future conversations were revolved around how do I get more at risk? I don't want any more in my base. I want more at risk, because then I knew I could play with that money, and it motivated me to really push the team to get there, because with everything being in a base, my money was stagnant. It was the same paycheck every single week or every other week. And then when I was able to play with that, go out, help the team, drive some sales, drive gross profit, and find different ways to do that, I ultimately earned more money. So I think by the end, that percentage was tripled what I had at risk versus what I had, at base.
Yeah. And when we made this move, Mike wasn't on the team, Hunter, so we didn't get to share that story with you. It was kind of like building up some opportunities of processes for you. My story I love to tell about this is that we launched VXP with you sometime in December. So we were kind of finalizing everything in October before the holidays and before November kind of gets started. And I remember that you were doing a really good job of pulling Bill into the process, and that you really wanted to get Bill's dad, for the listeners, really wanted to get Bill into the process and play a key role in like helping design out how this leadership conversation would go. And I remember that we had built 3 different scenarios together to present to Bill. We got Bill to show up to a Zoom meeting, and you had presented the 3 different scenarios, and he was asking questions. It was a really good meeting, going back and forth. And finally, at the end, you were about 45 minutes in the meeting, Bill was like, you know what, Hunter? I said my piece. This is what I would do. I trust you. You go do what you want to do. And you asked another question. And as soon as you started asking, I'm on the Zoom chat directly to you, like, take the hunting license you just got. And I remember you, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember you mid-ask looking down at the chat and saying, you know what, I'm going to go do this. And like you picked a lane, and Bill basically said, sweet, awesome. I got to go cook out for the party we're having later. And like, didn't really hang up, but basically was like exited the meeting. And then from there was like, we just moved through the process. The only thing that was standing in the way of going live was having conversations with the leadership team, having conversations with the reps, talking to them through about how the compensation was going to change, and getting them logged into the application. And we were, parallel is what we like to call it in November then, right?
Yeah.
For me, what was fun about that, I tell that story because I love it, because I got to watch him, you were working through, I want to ask for permission to get process, and you migrated like in real time in front of me to, I trust you. You've been smart about this. You're doing what's right. You can start asking for forgiveness now. Have you felt like that just changed post this conversation with you and Bill?
Yeah, there's been a handful of instances, but this was a really big step in that direction. Really over the last year and a half to 2, and this was just another big step in that way. He has the gift to be fishing with his dad, my grandpa, and my uncle today. And so, all the more, hopefully he's trusting me with taking care of business here. And that was just one in a really unique way around compensation. There's been a few, I don't want to say hiccups, just still, he's not in it every day. He's not looking at it like I might be in the rest of the team. So he still has maybe some of the prior way of thinking come out. And so it's just always a reminder to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what it looks like. This is why. Remember this. Oh, yeah. And so maybe a little forgiveness on the back end, because it's like, hey, remember we talked about this at one point. And he's like, okay, well, we'll just keep going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I felt the same way with my dad, too. There were many instances where it was like, when I started working with my dad, it was like, usually like every 3 months, it became like, hey, you got to tell me about these things. And then it became like 6 months, and I get my hand slapped, and I get a little coaching session, a little pep talk. And at the end of our time working together, it was like every 18 months. So the more that we worked together, the longer and longer the runway got. And Mikey got to see these little kind of like schisms, like rear their ugly head from time to time. And that's just the nature of working in the family business too.
Yeah.
So, there's pros and cons to it. This is one of those things that is probably both. It's probably a little bit of a pro that you get to work with your dad, and you get to work with somebody that you love and somebody that you have a lot of backstory and background with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the pro, and the con is that you get to work with somebody you love, not somebody you got a lot of backstory with. You got a lot of you got a lot of knowledge for too. So those are it's all good things. It's just different. So other piece of this was also kind of like moving away from where the sales reps had a variable compensation all tied to top line revenue and moving them into the VXP model too. Kind of walk me through, we don't need to get into nitty gritty details, but kind of how is the coaching gone with the team and shifting that from top line revenue, which is very, very basic and very, very easy to understand, to, hey, you've got profits here and volume, and how do the two interplay together, and kind of the VXP method.
I mean, it's really gone from no conversation around it, just get out and run around and sell the product, to, okay, what are you doing? What are you looking at? What products are you looking at? What package mix have you switched up? And the like. And it's been a lot more, I don't know, it's more freeing and enjoyable to say, okay, you have a pulse on this. Or all of a sudden they walk in and they're like, hey, can I do this, this, and this? And it's like, yeah, that's great. I mean, you should just do it and see what it does. I think maybe we talked about this when you're out on site, but one of the things that always drives me crazy is when my guys or anyone ask me a question to like use my brain to answer or figure out what they need to. And it's like, now slowly the guys are taking that extra 1 to 5 minutes to think through this and really just want maybe more of an affirmation or a thumbs up, or even like, hey, this is what I did. What do you think? Great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it went from really no conversation and more just like operational and executional conversations on this, what needs to happen, to now it's like, okay, well, I know we need to do this, but what if I do it this way because of the GP on this package, and the like. And so it's just, I think, better rounding out the picture for our salesmen as they walk into accounts and go sell. As they sit at their desk for a short bit each day to prep and then go into the accounts and sell, which has been fun. And then from a leadership side as well, to say, to go into a store and look at a set, like there's a particular convenience store in our market that has a fair sized beer cooler that it's really not, I mean, it's a bigger cooler than the volume of the store probably drives. And so then, for my sales manager walk in there and say, hey, what if we do this and this, run this thing and all these things in there, because it just is not the highest traffic store. And it's been great. It cleans it up. It makes it easier for the sales guy. It makes it better for the account. Yeah. Do you maybe not have the selection that you want in a space that large? Yes. But you're optimizing it for us and the account. So it's just really, formed our thinking in so many different ways. And for me, what's most helpful is forming the thinking of my leadership team as they drive everyone forward each morning and each day. That it slowly trickles down, even to the point, where our guys are going into accounts and saying, hey, this is why I want to bring this to you. If it's a light package and you're going to charge this is what you're going to make on it. They're like, oh, that's fantastic. Let's do it. So they're thinking through the line to be better, not just sales reps, but, account reps, or really just liaisons to our accounts of like, hey, I'm here to help you grow your business too.
Yeah, more of like a business partner with your accounts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure the account managers see that too and love that, and you gain a lot of trust, I'm sure, with them, and some freedom probably to do other switches or gains.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you noticing as the reps are asking for affirmation? I like the way you said that. They're telling stories to check on or ask for affirmation. Do you feel like the rate of questions that you're getting is going down, or the rate of engagement around, and that they're feeling more confident in their own decision and operating by themselves?
Yeah, I would say we're on the way there. The particular timing with our rollout in the midst of everything that was going on in the last year made it particularly, I mean, I guess for lack of a term, it made it fairly easy for them in the first months on VXP. And so really, May, June, these last 2 months in particular to comps over last year, May, June, and the poor beer drinking weather that we've had in North Dakota has really got the guys thinking of like, well, what in the world? Like, what's going on? Well, obviously, there's some churn and tumult in some numbers, and we've talked about that, but it's like, okay, guys, the rubber's hitting the road. Like, we got to continue to think, how are we going to do this? So there's been more questions probably just within how everything's been operating, industry wide now, but it's good. It's bringing it back front of mind more each and every day. And it's been fun to see, what particular guys are doing. Had some leadership conversations that, some frustrations with particular salesmen, maybe on some executional pieces or some asks that didn't get done. But at the same time, then you look at what that particular salesman is doing on a gross profit growth. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to be frustrated because it's like, hey, you're not following 100% of the way through the line on your execution, but you are doing something right because you're the main guy that's consistent on your GP growth every month. And so that's led to some really interesting and really good leadership and coaching conversations of the biggest thing is, just how are we thinking about it and how are we speaking to it? And what have we done to support somebody in that role? If you ask somebody to do something and then you don't follow up for 6 weeks, quite frankly, it's not on them that they didn't get it done, right? Like, it's actually on our leadership to say, okay, if I ask something of you, I'm going to check in with you in a week and in 2 weeks. And if you need help along the way, because that's my role. And if I don't do that and I come 6 weeks later and you didn't get done what I wanted done, there used to be this posture of like, well, I'm going to get upset because you didn't get it done. Well, it's like, it's actually, it's not their fault. It's your fault. You didn't follow up. And so we've had some really neat conversations through, working with VXP to just slowly change how we lead and coach too.
Yeah. Results focus more exclusively than execution or activity based focus only.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's incredible. It's fun to watch that too, right? Because then to me, it was always like, I can get out of babysitting would be like kind of like the really harsh way to say it. I can get out of babysitting and micromanaging behaviors and activity in the market, and I can get into leadership and moving the business forward in an organized, in an organic growth fashion that just felt more comfortable to my style better. I think it feels comfortable to your style too.
Absolutely. And for me, it's the person-centered approach, right? Like, think about it in the grand context. Like, the economy exists for the individual, right? Like, everything we do exists because I have a family and people I want to take care of. You guys do. Everyone listens to the podcast. They do. Not the other way around where, like, the individual exists for the economy. It's like, no, we're not some cog in a machine. It's sometimes we look at it that way, even in our business. But at the end of the day, everyone has family and friends and loved ones that they want to go home and take care of. Like, and it just so happens that the job in this crazy beverage industry that they are working within is allowing them and affording them to do what they want to do. And so to be able to go to them and teach and coach, not only do we see it help on what they're doing for us in our business, but they go home happier. Just their management of their own time in general around their personal and professional lives. You just see people come alive. And that, to me, more than, even laying out the compensation and seeing the benefits of what we laid out and working with VXP is I get to see the guys come alive and be happy and joyful and tell me, what they're doing and whatnot. And slowly now for us, on a grander scale is, okay, we're working with you to pay you a just wage that you have a chance to, really to drive and make the difference. Like, kind of like you were saying when you had wanted to keep adding some of your money to the, at risk because you can grow that. And then it's like, okay, now that you have that and, we do everything we can to make sure you guys are taken care of, is even going on the other side now and thinking, how do we make sure and help you? What are other things that we can offer you to help make sure as you go home and you hopefully made some good money within your VXP and overall comp structure? It's like, okay, how are you going to be responsible to that? So you're not going to come to me and say, well, I didn't make any money last year. It's like, well, you did, but what did you do with it? And so that's been really fun. I mean, just overall from the ground level up of where you get paid all the way up to, okay, great. Now you have that. What are you doing? It's been fun to be able to help somewhat coach in those ways. And is really, I mean, this has allowed for probably more personal conversations around comp than I know we've ever had since I've been back in 5 years. And is really just a beautiful gift to see, like, okay, this is great. Like, we're just a human organization that we're trying to be really spot on with our crew and be as transparent as we ought to be, to give everyone the freedom to help drive this business forward and drive the personal lives forward.
That's awesome. The other piece of the puzzle here that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about is that, we really walk through, like, what is Jerome centric doing top to bottom, but what about our partners being suppliers, and how are they, interacting with the new process, connecting with your team potentially differently too. We spend some time talking to suppliers from time to time, but a lot of times, like, classic suppliers are going to come and be like, who wants a TV? Who wants $1,000? Who wants this? Who wants that?
Right.
And it can be a different nuanced approach under this method that you're taking on with, the culture and the cult of what VXP becomes or what it has become for Jerome. Where is that rubber met the road from a supplier side? Have you noticed anything different? Have you coached any suppliers? Have you talked to anybody one-on-one about how your guys are thinking differently now?
Yeah, so we've had some interesting conversations with suppliers. I know we talked about this when we were jumping online of like, then you go back and renegotiate with suppliers maybe your FOB on some things. Well, North Dakota's a one FOB state, so we don't necessarily have that opportunity because they got to set it statewide. But we've had some interesting conversations that it really comes into play more when we do talk pricing with particular suppliers. That we do share with them more, like, okay, we're more apt to do something if we can negotiate on the gross profit side. Like, that's what's driving our business. Suppliers have received it well. Some don't receive it as well because they see what they need to drive. I think the biggest place where it's really come to play for us is, I think, as independent beer and beverage distributors, we all get calls often on new brands and potential brands. And as I've been learning the business from my dad, Bill, like we were talking about, I've seen what he's done and how we've talked about margin and different things that we want to make in particular to our business. And it's been really fun of like, okay, yeah, if we can hit this line, we're in. Obviously you work through some of the support and whatnot. We just had a great supplier call online who was like, yep, we're going to hit that margin line. That's how we're going to support you. And so I was like, okay, great. Then that goes into what my sales reps see and that they're going to want to sell it because they can make some money on it. So that was pretty neat. And then, yeah, to the other side, we've seen some that are showing you, okay, you're going to make 18% and you're going to make, $2.82 a case. And I'm like, sorry, buddy, I can't do it. And I had one guy on a Zoom call. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, sorry, buddy, like I cannot make a net profit off that. I'm sorry. Like, if you're open to renegotiating on around, what my gross margin can be, then I would love to consider your brand. But outside of that, I can't. And so it's really been neat to add another filter and find the most effective filter to all these of like, man, I mean, sometimes your gut gets in there and like, oh, this seems like a really cool brand. And then you look at the numbers, it's like, well, that doesn't really help. And so it really helps filter out the gut feel of like, well, looks really cool, but there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something really important about like, I was, when the numbers line up, share with my guys get excited about the team goes and sells this product. Like there's somewhat of like, I think for me and you, it's always been somewhat of like a release of that. This isn't me being, a mean beer distributor saying that I can't sell your product because it's not enough money. It's me being a logical beer distributor, and this is how much I need to make, and this is what is going to get my sales team's attention.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's really done has been neat slowly with Bill. We've had some neat conversations, even in this last year of as we look to grow and expand, our own business of different products in our portfolio, that the margin line that we've that we've driven down for many years in the particular base of our portfolio might look different if we pick up, say full strength spirits or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, when you look at a percentage basis, maybe it doesn't look as good as you want, but when you look at a dollar basis, I mean, whether it's spirits or any other category, I mean, coffee, like even packaged coffee, we've looked at a little bit, is like, yeah, the percentage margin might not be what it is, but it's also a different category. It's like, hey, am I putting in the same effort or less effort? And what am I making on it from a dollar perspective? And so we've slowly been starting to think in that regard from a high level leadership perspective, which has been a lot of fun, because now it's like, okay, again, you don't say yes to everyone that knocks on your door, but if you see a good opportunity, it's just this giving a better rounded way of thinking around what comes our way from top down, from inside out, from outside in, basically from every aspect.
Yep. There's another client of ours that called a couple weeks ago, and this has instigated a podcast topic, which we haven't completed yet, but we will. It's, does GP percentage matter more than GP dollars? And it's like, yes, and kind of the dramatization that I told the client was, to me, it's the GP dollars, because if I told you that you could drive another $1 million in gross profit dollars, in raw dollars, didn't pay any more in wages to delivery drivers, didn't have to build more warehouse space, didn't have to do a bunch of extra cost stuff to earn that, and all that changed is the percentage of GP that your P&L said, would you give a shit? Like, right. Would you really care? And that's a dramatization, because they both matter. And I think you're going about it the perfect way, of that what our percentage does matter, particularly if it's dilutive to that category of product. So if the percentage is, 24%, and it's a value beer or a value item, and it's earning another, it's earning $1.50 or $2 a case in GP per CE, versus one of our core value beers in your portfolio is maybe $3 or $4, like, never do that. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
But if it's 50% margin and at least at the same GP per CE, it's not dilutive from a GP per CE basis. So that's kind of like the nuance that where they both matter.
Yeah, and my favorite thing, I mean, we don't really talk about it in regards to our own business, but as we encounter customers and the way that they think and whatnot, is like, well, like, there's profit margin is less on beer. It's like, well, do you take margin to the bank or do you take dollars to the bank? Because I know you're driving more volume on beer than some of these other things that you have a higher profit margin percentage. And so that's also been a fun conversation that we get to have with some of our customers and whatnot. But yeah, also internally is just that. I mean, if we can add more money to the bottom line by not doing much more, does the percentage matter? And it's definitely a both end. I mean, for me, it then comes into, we talk about generations a lot. I think we talk about generational thinking a lot in this industry, period. But it's like, okay, I always need to stop myself and pause and say, okay, I got to think of where my dad's coming from and his formative years of thinking around what he's doing and why that's important in the way that I start thinking about it. And how do we marry the two? How do we bring it together to take the business forward? And there is a mix of that. I mean, I totally get when he's saying, okay, I'm driving this margin line. Well, when he got in the business 30 years ago, we had 15 suppliers and maybe 300 SKUs. And now we represent 40 suppliers and 1,500 SKUs in many different categories. And it's like, well, they can't all be the same, right? I mean, even per package, per brand, like all these things, I mean, you get close, but it's like, what does it look like? At the end of the day, I don't put dollars in the bank.
Yeah. It's a great attitude. It's the right way. And you said also, like, the way that Bill approached the business from the 80s and 90s, and the way that in early 2000s, and the way you're approaching the business over the last 5 years from 2019 and beyond, from COVID and beyond, they're just different. And there's an element from the past. There's an element of the past of that where it does matter, and the business is growing kind of organically on the back of capita, number of people in your market, and the consumption side. But on the back end of the 2020s, consumption has been down, per capita growth in a lot of markets across their people growth has been down in a lot of markets too. And we've had to be more creative. I remember having a conversation with our drivers in the mid 2000s and was just like, hey, you guys, we're going to cut another route this year. And I wish that I was having the conversation like my dad Greg was having in the mid 90s, where it's like, we had a great year, we're going to add 2 more drivers. We don't live in that world no more. This is consolidation, volumes are going down, volumes are getting tougher, profits are getting tougher to harvest and tougher to find. And unfortunately, we have to cut some costs, and I can't have a route going out, just delivering 100,000 cases a year. We got to deliver 130 or 140 cases on these routes, and that's just the way it is. So it's elements from the past and elements of the future. The past isn't all dead. It's not like volume's all dead, but where we're moving towards is a much more elegant dollars conversation for sure around a complex portfolio, just the way you're talking about.
And really just even to be creative on, okay, as the dynamics in the industry change, not only how do we need to look at the core of our business now, but what else do we need to look at to make sure that we are able to take care of the house, take care of our people as we keep going forward? Is it a totally different product line? Is it a totally different category? Is it, is there something to take the knowledge base that we have? Is it a totally different business? I mean, we haven't gone that way. Not abandoning what we do, not at all. But it's been fun to be able to think of hey, yeah, there's some crazy stuff, some tumult going on, and consumer sentiment and nobody really knowing what's going on in any category. Then it's okay, we want to be aware, just at least be on our toes.
And it's how you can grow. We're doing a really nice job of understanding that it actually is easier to focus our energy on growing the business, and we can only focus so much energy on cutting costs, because you can only cut costs so deep. There is a floor in which you can go. It's floor on time and a floor on people. And, we can't make more time in the day, and we can't have all the people in the world to, drive wages down either from a labor availability side. But we can spend more time, and this is, because beer distributors are traditionally operational folks, and they miss, in my opinion, and I was one of them through the early part of my career, they miss an opportunity to focus on growth and how do we grow and how we do be strategic about growing and managing that. I think you've done a really nice job of elevating that side of your business. To that point, I wanted to kind of walk the group through some results, and I'm going to do these in a percentage impact because some of this information or a lot of this information is confidential. So I appreciate you letting me share this. So working through this culture and this mindset, your GP per CE was growing all of 2023 about 1.7%. Now, launching this method in VXP at the end of 2023 to now 2024 in June, your growth factor is about 5.3% on GP per CE. So I think that's an incredible, and 3xing the growth, even after you had an incredible 2023 off of all the Bud Light drama and all the Bud Light exchange and everything else. And month to date, as we talk in June, being a key month for the northern wholesalers because of the seasonality curve, you guys are driving an additional 8.9% growth factor on your GP per CE too. So I think, for the listeners, a lot of wholesalers may still be growing GP per CE, where you can find by continuing to focus on it and find unique ways to focus on it, whether you work with VXP or whether you don't. Finding a way to focus on it this is the kind of results you can see. I think you're a very positive case study from what we're seeing, Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun to see that, and to be able to show. I mean, it's not like I don't sit down with my dad and my uncle to break this down all the time, but probably mid-year we'll just say, hey, this is where we're at. Check this out. Because I know it's a way that they've never thought about it down to the end, what's the aggregate on average we make per case? And what does that do at the end of the year? And it's well, here it is.
Yeah.
Yes, we've made an investment in this, but here's the results. And this isn't just this year thing, because it's slowly helped shape how we think from frontline to top line, from frontline sales to, top line say executive thinking, like it's changing how we think about things, which hopefully in the long run is going to just drive more dollars to the bottom line as, every little decision you make every day.
What you've done so well is engaging and kind of incorporating the cult side. Culture, but I'm smart ass and say cult side of, what this method looks like. Because if you do treat it like a cult and it becomes and infects the business like a cult
Right.
culture would, you get these kinds of outsized results. If you think of it exclusively as a piece of technology or exclusively as, an application, you miss a big opportunity. The application helps re-engage and shorten the feedback loop up on, if I do this today, what are my results tomorrow? If I do this month, what are my results look like at the month? It just helps streamline that and re-engages that feedback loop for frontline sales reps and for the whole organization. So I have to give mad props to you on how you derived and how you distilled this culture throughout the organization. That's how you're getting these results, my man.
Yeah, I think it's important to add too. I mean, when we look at those results and you see that kind of GP per CE growth, yeah, last year was a good volume year, right? Because you picked up some extra volume with Miller Lite, Coors Light coming off the Bud Light thing. That doesn't always necessarily contribute to the GP per CE growth. I mean, you're getting some good volume, but those mediocre packages as far as profitability. So to grow your GP per CE, 5.8% that you did on top of that, extra volume with the lower GP per CE items is really, that speaks highly as well too for you and your team and what you guys are actually focusing on and moving the needle with.
Thank you. And in particular to that, the biggest thing is just what's your packaging in stores? Are you pitching the most profitable package on whether it's a Coors Light or a Miller Lite? Seeing the difference that makes. That's been a huge part of it. Our guys dug in deep. Oh, like, why have this? Well, and then this should go in there and getting into it, when you get in the app, you see the aggregate, the average of, okay, this is what you make. And it's like, well, I'm going into this store with, this tier. What is it, right? Because it doesn't maybe break down all the way. And so then they're asking all these questions. It's like, okay, well, then this needs to go here and this needs to go here. And what about this? And it's like, great. That's great thinking. So it's been a lot of fun to see that, and hopefully we can continue to drive some more.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Hunter, for joining us today. You rock. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to add at the end, my man?
I don't think so. Just thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Okay, awesome. Well, you rock. Cheers to everybody out in Tapped In land, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers.